Hi, welcome everybody. So yes, this is a skills and development course from zero to Android development for complete beginners. Shortly I'll be going over how this course is split up, what's in this course, and you can work out if all of it or some of it's for you or whatnot. Okay, doke. So if I just click to this, who is this talk for? This talk is for you if you are any one of the below. If you're somebody looking to get started with Android development, but you don't know where to start, or maybe you're a total beginner to software development who wants to know some of the core programming concepts. So it might not be Android, but you want to kind of dip your toe into something and you don't know anything at the moment. Or you're somebody with an idea for an app, but you haven't got the technical skills yet to bring it to life. Okay, so if you're any of those people, you're going to get something out of this course today. I'll be going into a bit more detail in a moment about exactly how the course is split up shortly. So today's webinar. So the first section, I'll give a little bit of an introduction about myself. I've called the section Music Teaching in the Arabian Desert. There was a reason for that. I'll go into a little bit of my backstory, how I got into it and whatnot. And then part one is going to be downloading, installing, setting up and getting going quickly with the software. Quite often with software development, we just don't know where to start, so we don't start. So part one will be a fairly quick section to get anybody going, whether you're a complete beginner or coming from a different platform perhaps. Part two is very much geared more towards beginners. So we're going to make a very, very simple app. It's going to be a crash course in programming basics. It's going to cover some pretty key and core concepts of programming in general, like variables and conditional logic. So if you're coming from another platform, this section perhaps may be recap or review for you, but hopefully this will be very beginner friendly. And then at the end, we'll do a sort of Q&A section, or where do I go from here? So you'll have seen the app, the how to get set up. You hopefully take some stuff away with you, and I'll hopefully guide you if you decide to keep going with it, which I hope that you do. And those of you that do stay to the end, there'll be a secret surprise for you, and it is worth it, I promise. Okay, so introduction, music teaching in the Arabian Desert. So I'm going to start by sharing some pictures of myself, all of how many years ago? About 7 or 8 years ago. Okay, so this is me in 2012. It's a small town called Madinat Zayed, which is about an hour and a half southwest of Abu Dhabi. Okay, so prior to becoming a software developer, my background is in music, music technology. My degree was nothing to do with computing. It was a music technology degree. I went to the Royal Northern College of Music and trained to be a music teacher. And so from 2011 to 16, I was doing that. And yeah, nothing at all to do with software development, but a little bit to do with hanging out with camels, as you can see by the picture on the right. So key points about my journey. Some of you may know I'm currently now a senior Android engineer at a pretty good company as well. You know, Sky Betting Gaming is a fantastic place to work, really happy. So doing okay in my career. I've got permanent imposter syndrome, but then don't we all? So yeah, fake it till you make it and all that. So that's me at the moment. But yeah, my background is nothing to do with software development whatsoever. You know, I did I think an A-level in computing when back in the day, alongside music and music technology, all that kind of stuff. It was actually my worst grade. I don't want to tell anybody that. I might get a demotion. So yeah, it wasn't really my strong point in college from an academic point of view. I've always been tech-minded. I've always liked gadgets and mucking around with phones like some of us here, quite possibly, but definitely not a programmer from my education history. I do not have a degree in computer science. I've got no significant prior programming experience prior to when I started. Again, I'm not trying to talk myself out of a job. I'm trying to hammer home the point that this idea that you need a certain background to even enter the industry or make an app is evidently not true. Okay, and hopefully I'm living proof of that to some extent. So essentially, it was a desire to make better software that made me take the leap. I was working as a teacher, enjoying it while I was out there, and those of you who've worked in or around the classroom will know, there's various administrative programs and softwares that teachers have to use, and the schools get charged quite a lot of money for these things. And frankly, they were terrible. They were bemoaned by all the teachers, and being a sort of software enthusiast, liking a good app, liking a good program, something easy, was a major source of frustration for me and my colleagues. And I was sitting there thinking, if I could design this, I would design it better. And that was nagging away at me for years and years and years. And I was just kind of afraid to give it a go. But in the end, when I came back to the UK in 2016, did a bit of supply teaching, which was rough. A load of year 9s on a Friday afternoon telling me to go away in their own particular way. You know, I wasn't at a point where I was loving teaching, and I thought, you know what, it's now or never. And I just decided to try and make my own version of a teaching app. Okay. And so once I dove in and got started, it didn't actually feel like that much of a leap. Like most journeys, it was the getting started thing that was the hardest. And once I got going, got some momentum, you know, the rest was history. And I can sit here today saying it's not felt terribly hard. I've not missed having a computer science degree, not to dismiss that as one way to get in, but it's not the only way. Okay, so very quick overview there. You know, I want to give you a feel for my journey. There may be developers from a different platform here today looking at Android as a first step who might have a different path into this. You might be in or around the tech, the software development sphere, but not quite, you know, confident enough to dive in or want to know a bit more about it. Or maybe you do genuinely have an idea for an app, something that you would love to make, and you just would love that skill set. So that was my journey. I hope you found that interesting. So the path, in my experience, to going from 0 to Android. So these are the 4 steps that I think that worked for me, and I would recommend to anybody else here today who's a complete beginner. First of all, you need to get the stuff you need, you know, whether that's a program or some cables or your computer or whatever. This step is much easier than you might think. Really, really is, especially with Android. It's one program, one. The second step was just learning the basics, just you know, in whatever way that works for you, just the foundational stuff. It could be video courses, webinars, books, boot camps, blogs, anything like that, any combination. We've all got different learning styles, okay? Just get out there and get the absolute foundation stuff. And number 3, as soon as you can do this one, the better you'll get on. Accept that you don't need to know everything, and accept it's absolutely fine to get started with your projects with only the basics. The rest will come with time, like any skill. Quite often we think there's so much to learn that it's too intimidating and we don't want to, oh, I'll never get there. Get going with minimal stuff and away you go. And then this is the key, crucial one, and any existing programmers will attest to this. The sooner you can apply the stuff that you're learning, the stuff you're copying and trying to digest, as soon as you can apply that to your own thing that you're passionate about, whether you've got a customer management software app or a social app or whatever it might be, as soon as you can dive in learning from your mistakes, that's going to be, that's something that you care about. That's when the learning's really going to hit home. And the good news for you today, and I have pretty much finished the introduction now, is number 1 and number 2, getting the software and learning the basics. We're going to kind of cover this today, hopefully in the next 49 minutes. All right, so that is the introduction. That's a bit about me, my background, and why I'm so passionate about sharing this journey with people, because I did it, I love it, I've never been happier in my career, and I'd love other people to experience some of the enjoyment that I've had. Okay, so part 1, getting the stuff and setting up the stuff. Okie doke. So here's what some non-programmers think you need to make software. Okay, I don't know if any of you seen that classic film, Swordfish there. We think we need like, a really powerful computer or tons of stuff and all that. And in reality, what you actually need is just a computer. I'm assuming you've all got internet because you're watching this today. So if you've already got a computer and internet, that's all you need. Okay, we're going to get the software in a second, which is very easy. So we will find the one program that we need, Android Studio. We're going to do this in just a moment. It's completely free. There's no barrier to getting this. You can all get this today. I'm going to download it. We're going to install it, set it up. We're going to open the app, be a little bit horrified at first, and then we're going to separate the noise out and actually realize, okay, here are the main things we care about. We don't have to know every single button on day 1. We're going to set up an Android emulator. We'll talk about what an emulator or a virtual device is in a second. But newsflash, you don't even need an Android phone to do Android development, believe it or not. The computer can do all of it for you. And then we're going to run the template project, the first project that Android gives you. We're going to just go ahead and run that straight away. on the emulator, on a phone if you have one, and this should hopefully not take too long. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this now. I'm going to switch over to screen one, so just bear with me. So step one, guys, you can follow along with this at home. It's dead easy. We're going to open up your browser of choice, so Chrome or whatever. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to give you a really simple thing to remember. We can just type download Android Studio. We can all remember that. I'm just going to enlarge this a little bit for you. So yeah, download Android Studio in your search engine. You'll get a few links. I recommend not getting it from any third-party place. Always get it from developer.android.com. You know, then you're getting the latest thing and it's safe and there's no virus there. So developer.android.com, download Android Studio and SDK tools. We're going to click that. If for any reason you have any trouble finding that, the link there, you can maybe see developer.android.com/studio. So you can go ahead and get this now or after this call and click the big green button, download Android Studio, 800 megabytes. Click that. We have a license agreement to read through. I've already read through this, so I'm already happy with this. I'm going to accept that and download. Okay. I've got fairly fast internet, but I won't make you sit through this. I have got a, here's one you made earlier. So from yesterday, once you've downloaded that, go ahead and open it. Oops, not retry, Vinny. Go ahead and open it. There we go. And then that will launch the installer. So we've already done the first step. We've got the software we need downloaded. Stop. And I'm going to minimize my browser now. And Josh, if you can let me know, do we see the setup thing in the middle of the screen there?
Yeah, it's in the middle.
Good. I'm going to try and zoom this a bit so we can see what's going on. Give me one moment. So then after opening the installer, we have the setup wizard. We'll go through this together. We'll click next. By default, Android Studio is selected. That's obvious. You may or may not have the option to pre-install a virtual device. So this is the computer's emulated, faked virtual Android phone unit. You don't need a phone to develop. I'm going to uncheck this in case that when you do this, you don't get this. It does save a bit of time, but actually adding one later on is dead easy, and we'll be doing that shortly. So that looks good. Android Studio, we'll click next. Default location is fine. I'm on Windows. Install, and then that's going to go ahead and install. It shouldn't take too long. So yeah, again, you may have had the virtual device pre-selected. If you do this at home or now or after the call, feel free to do that. It will save having to manually add this fake software Android phone later. So it's entirely up to you. That's now completed, and that is now done. We've downloaded and installed the only thing we need. So I'm going to go ahead and start this now to run the setup wizard. Okay, I'm not going to use my previous version. I'm going to do it as if it's the first time. So do not import settings. And then we get the setup wizard. Okay, you won't have any dialogues if you've never had Android here before. So this is what you will get once you've installed the software. So we're going to go through this together, nice and quick. We're going to leave the setup as standard. All the things in the custom thing we can change later if we wanted to. So standard is fine. I am personally a big fan of dark modes. You can choose dark or light. I will be choosing dark for this course. That's already better in my humble opinion. So dark mode, and then you, if it's on a brand new machine, will have a much bigger set of things here. SDK, which you can maybe see there, Software Developer Kit. Android will go and fetch a whole load of files and things you need to make, called this SDK. It's about 800, 900 megabytes big. There's no way for me to do this without it wasting a lot of tutorial time. So I've kind of already got that. So just accept what's on the settings thing and then wait for that to all install. So in my case, I already have that. One thing I'll say, if you've got an Intel processor, whether this is on Mac or Windows, if you've got an Intel, it may prompt you to install this HAX-M thing. There'll be like an administrator warning, hardware accelerated memory thing. Sounds really scary. Because we're going to be having an Android emulator, a fake Android phone on our computer in just a moment, which is really great and useful. Accepting that will allow Intel's processor to boost that, to share some of its memory to make that phone run a bit better. I highly recommend, if you get such a prompt, accept it, give it the permission. You'll notice a massive performance difference when we run this fake phone in a moment. If you don't get that because you might have an older machine or a different processor, don't worry, your emulator might take a few minutes to get going. Hopefully that's clear enough. And then I'm just going to finish that. And then you should, after that, get to the Welcome to Android Studio dialog. So at this point, we've downloaded, installed, and set up Android Studio. We are good to go. Okay. So we're going to dive straight in, have a look around this crazy new software, start a new Android Studio project. So click that. And then we're going to get this new project setup wizard that you always get. There's a load of template things here, and some of these won't make sense or might look really confusing. By default, it should be on empty activity. Activity just meaning the screen in focus activity. Empty activity is absolutely fine for most projects, and it's absolutely perfect for us. So leave this as default, empty activity, next. And we've got some setup stuff here. Now, when we do our app in the next part, I'll go through this in more detail. For now, you can leave all the defaults almost. Change name to whatever you want. I'm going to call it my first ever Android app. I'll talk about package name when we make our real app. I've decided I want to save all of mine on my desktop. You might want to keep all your projects together, so I'm going to just go to my desktop and make a folder for all of these. You will have to get used to Android's terrible file manager. My Android projects. And I could make a folder for this one. Whoops. I'll make a folder for this one. Let's call it my first app. Yay. Okay. So you can change the save location, leave this for now, make this whatever you want it to be called. I'm going to be doing this course in Java. You could do Android in Java or Kotlin. Kotlin's a newer version of the software. When I teach Android, both in my private courses and to colleagues, when I teach Android, I start with Java because when you write the Kotlin, this new, shiny, clever, small, simple language, it ultimately gets converted into Java. And so actually understanding what's happening in Java, because that's really the language that Android works in my opinion, is worthwhile. You may find a course which teaches it all in Kotlin, that's fine. Switching from Java to Kotlin, dead easy. So I recommend that you go ahead and change this to Java. So whatever you want to call it, save it where you want, Java, and we'll leave the rest for now and just click finish. And it's at this moment that the diggers decide to start digging up my new build estate. So apologies if you can hear that. Josh, do let me know if that background noise is a pain.
No, I can't hear anything my side of things, so I think we're in the clear.
Very good. Of all the bits I'm explaining, visible and coming through okay so far?
Yep, fine my side of things.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Right, so then we get into Android Studio, our first impressions, okay? So this is the point where we get a little bit intimidated and a little bit scared. Before I talk you through this, down here at the bottom, you can see some activity, some bars, indexing, pause, some progress bars and whatnot. We're just going to wait for that to finish. I recommend whenever you make a new project, just let Android Studio do its thing. If it's the first time you've ever installed Android Studio, there's going to be some stuff to do. It's going to fetch some files and whatnot. So as it's doing that, I'm just going to try and get my chat window open again. All good. Yeah, thank you, Matt. That's good. Okay, right. So, okay, no more activity down the bottom right. Let's go through our first impressions. This can be really intimidating to a new developer. But I equate the impression of opening Android Studio for the first time to opening Microsoft Excel for the first time. I'm going to make the assumption that most of us have used a spreadsheet program before, like Microsoft Excel. If you think about that, all those tabs and all the icons within those tabs and buttons and notice bars and panes, there's a whole ton of stuff on there too. And I bet most of us don't know every single button. But after a few times of using it, we get comfortable with the 2 or 3 main areas. So I'm going to go through these areas with you now and hopefully cut out some of the noise, the things we don't need to care about right now. Okay. So looking at this, we've got on what's new in 4.0. So there's this sort of pane on the right-hand side. There's some interesting stuff here, but if you're new to Android, none of this will make sense. So we can hide this assistant. So all these things on the right, assistant, Gradle, Device Explorer, we can close them all down. So we don't need that anymore. So now we've got this big dark gray space here where it looks like we can type stuff. That's good. So we'll leave this full width. And then on the left, we've got a sort of project pane thing. Again, all these things on the left, we can open and close like that. So the view that I recommend you get started with, close down any junk on the right, leave the code editor obviously in the middle, and have this project pane. Later on, if you have images and pictures, we might use the resource manager, but we don't need that today. Just this project pane. And that's all we need to worry about. I'm gonna try and annotate my screen just to highlight the 3 areas, if this works. Draw a shape. So on the left, project pane as denoted by this guy here. That's gonna be our files. Then big code editor here where all the magic happens. And you'll see in this code editor, we've got we've got one file called .java, one file called .xml. We'll be getting that into in part 2. And then in the top right, our friend, the toolbar. That's all we really need to worry about. You know, there's nothing else on the screen that is that interesting. We can get going with those 3 areas. We don't even need to know every single button in the toolbar on the top right. The file menu we will only use, oops, I need to switch back to my mouse. The file menu we will only use when we close down the project and open a new one. So that's kind of our main bit, files, and then code, and then the toolbar. So I'm going to clear the screen now. I'm going to focus on the toolbar. So let's clear that, clear drawings, very good. Up here, loads of crazy buttons, but there's only two we care about. The play button, which will launch our template project on whatever device we want, and then the little drop down next to it, which is the device. So you might remember in the installer, we have the option to pre-configure a virtual device. And if you do this at home and you select that, you will probably have a device there. If for whatever reason you don't, or you want to do it manually, we need to configure one now. So it's only the second button that we need to worry about, and that's the AVD manager, standing for Android Virtual Device Manager. You can see this little phone with a little robot guy down here if your screen's big enough, and you'll see the same button there as well. Okay, so we're going to go into this now, add an Android emulator, get it set up, get it running on the computer, and then we'll see if we can get this project on the emulator. So open AVD Manager, that's going to bring a big dialog thing in the middle there, and you'll see it says, you know, we don't have anything yet, it's blank. So we're going to create a virtual device. Okay. Now, the benefit to this is, if you're a developer and you want to see what your app looks like on a watch, on a phone, on a TV, on a car, Android Auto, you can emulate all of those things. You don't need to go out and buy a car and a TV and a watch and whatnot. That's one of the powers of it. Also, it's a lot quicker to get it on your computer than it is to get a USB cable, plug it in and muck around. So I spend quite a lot of my time using these emulators. So I'm going to leave it as phone. Pixel 2, yeah, that's fine. I recommend if you do have to set up one from default, if you didn't get one in the installer, that is, choose one with the little Play Store icon. That will give you access to the actual app store where you can download other apps and Google Maps and Gmail and all those. You know, it will behave very much like a real phone. You may run into issues with like some of the location-y stuff if you don't choose one with a play button. So the Pixel 2 is fine. I'll go next. You'll see on this screen that I've got version Q and Pi already on my machine. You won't have this. These will all be grayed out with the word download next to it. You'll need to just download the latest Android operating system. I recommend version Q or Pi. Don't go with R, well, maybe R's the very latest. So just choose a version of Android, doesn't really matter. Q is absolutely fine. Download it, you'll have some more agreements to accept. And then that is the software for the phone. We click next. I'll leave it called Pixel 2 and finish. And now we have an emulated phone. Okay, so that's good for us to use. I'm going to close down this. Oh, I'm shaking the thing away. I'm going to close down this virtual device manager and open that back up. So now in the top right, next to my run button, we've got the emulator device we just added. So I'm going to make sure that's selected and click run. So we're just going to run whatever the heck Android gave us in our default project. So let's do this right now. It's going to take a moment. You can see in the bottom right, we have some more activity down there. Okay. And then you can see in the screen in the middle, a big well, very large fake Pixel phone. And give it a few more moments because the phone itself has to boot up. It has to actually load up the Android software like a real phone. In these awkward pauses where I'm waiting for things, if there's any questions you want to fire on the chat thing, I have got the chat window open on my other monitor, so feel free to sling me any questions as I'm going through this. If not, enjoy the Google loading logo. Nearly there. Subsequent times when you load up the emulator, it does go a little bit quicker than this. And depending on the speed of your machine, your mileage may vary. Okay, my first ever Android app. So it's worth taking this moment now to celebrate that in the space of what, 15, 16 minutes, we've gone from downloading, setting up, installing, setting up, adding an emulator, and having this app on a phone. Simple as that. I've not done anything else, any other magic there. Stephen says, how reliable are the emulators? Do you often find that real devices behave slightly differently? They're getting better and better, Stephen. Like things like emulating location, camera, some of the biometric stuff, you know, they're adding most of the features. Reliable and accurate, I've not had any issues. I mean, they're a bit fiddly with things like faking location and faking moving around, but pretty much all the sensors that I care about, accelerometers and fingerprint, face recognition, the camera, they have a way you can emulate that and fake that. So no, personally, I've not ran into any issues where, oh, it works on the emulator, but not my phone, unless that particular phone, like Huawei, whatever, has a thing. So yeah, from my limited experience in iOS world, yeah, sometimes, well, certainly a few years ago, I found they were not like the real thing, but you know, 4 or 5 years going strong, emulator's pretty good and getting better by the day. Hopefully that answers your question. And we can use this like a real phone. So I can press the home key. I can, you know, slide up, go to the Play Store. Yeah, and my app actually, my first app, there it is. You know, I can drag that and put it on the home screen. So if you want to get started and don't even have an Android phone, you can start making apps and seeing how they look right away. The last thing I'd said I would do in this section is talk about how you'd go about doing it on a real phone. I would show this, but you know, showing on my phone might be a bit fiddly. There's one thing you need to do. So you would plug this into your computer with a USB cable, but then if I go back now to the software, you wouldn't necessarily immediately see it under running devices, because to install an app over a phone requires some administrator debugging privileges. So there's a weird thing you've got to do. Those of you with an Android phone might have seen this before. You have to turn on developer options, tap the build number of your phone 7 times to turn this on, and turn on a thing called USB debugging. Long story short, if you plug in your phone and you don't see it in the running devices, Google USB debugging and the make of your phone. In my case, I'm not going to see this, I swipe down, I go to settings, I go to soft system, about phone, I go to build number, I tap that 7 times, tap, 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 and it says, you are now a developer. Then I go back into my developer options and I scroll down like a million settings and I find a thing called USB debugging. Really complicated, but all that means is you're giving your phone permission to receive potentially harmful apps over a USB cable. It's designed to protect users. So Google my phone, USB debugging, follow the instructions. It is really easy. Then when you plug your phone in, you will see your phone in fact, why not? I'm going to plug my phone in now. I already have USB debugging, but I don't have the right cable. I'm not going to waste your time while I find the cable. You would then see next to Pixel 2 my phone, and you'd click play and the app would be on your phone. Simple as that. So that brings an end to section 1. Hopefully everybody there can see, download Android Studio, install, setup, launch the empty activity, and then you can put that on a real phone. Just as a little bonus for this section, I'm going to change one thing in this. So if I can draw your attention back to the code editor in the middle, we've got 2 files. We'll be talking about these in detail in the next section in about 2 minutes. We have a Java file for the programming code, and we have a .xml. When we click the XML file, which is our layout, where the screen is, this will look awful. So we have a million new options here. I'll be going through this in a second. If I now go to code on the right here, so down from here, very right, design, code, and split. If I go to code, that looks familiar, things we can type, okay? We'll be getting into this. If I go to split, I get half code, and I get half the sort of blueprint for my screen, okay? Now this code on the left here, we don't know anything about this. There's loads of weird colors and symbols and whatnot. But if I look at my app, if I go to my emulator and I see the word, click the app, hello world, okay, the default text we get. Well, I wonder if we can just change this right now. So we have hello world. So let's try and find hello world inside this code here. Text view, okay, and text equals hello world. Right, so if I change the stuff in speech marks here and put something motivational to myself, like, look, I can now update the text and get it running on a real device, or whatever you want. You know, type something funny that will help the learning stick for yourself. So if I now look at the design editor, I can see that's been updated in real time. And I have now my new text there. So if I click run, or it's now turned into a rerun symbol. If I run this and go to my emulator, shouldn't take as long this time. Look, I can now update the text and get it running on a real device. So without any programming knowledge, with a bit of poking around and just playing about, you're not going to break anything really. We can get something updated on the phone. So the first thing you can do is download the software, go to that layout file, this XML thing, go to the code or split view, and just change that text for something for you, plug your phone in, get it on your phone and show your friends that within 10 minutes, look, I can put an app on my phone. Okay, so that brings to an end part number 1. I'm going to move on to part 2 with an overview. At this point, any questions relating to part 1 while I'm doing this, feel free to go ahead. Otherwise, I'll plow straight on. Good. So we've done everything for part 1. Okay. Dum, 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 dum. So part 2, we're going to make an app now. It's going to be a crash course in programming basics. So what non-programmers think computer code looks like? Guess what film I'm going to quote for this? Of course. Okay. Not exactly, but it can look like hieroglyphics when we don't understand it. What programming actually looks like. Okay, now there's a few symbols there, a few weird brackets, but if you were to look at that as somebody who's never written a line of code in the world, I wonder if you'd be able to work out what's going on there. And if the answer is slightly yes, then yeah, this is kind of, when code is written well, what it can be like. If the user's logged in, show the home screen. Otherwise, show the login screen. Okay? So let's go through this overview, particularly for any existing developers who might have done a bit of Android stuff before. I want to be clear that there's not anything here that's going to be stuff you've already done. So we're going to look at the layout files, that thing we just changed in detail, and talk a little bit about markup languages. And we're going to go over the syntax and build a simple layout in real time for our app. Then we're going to look at the Java files, and we're going to talk about what a programming language is. We're going to go through 3 concepts that we're going to need to make our simple app, and I'll tell you what the app is in a moment: variables, methods, and conditional logic. So we're going to run through these 3 things that might sound scary, but when you understand what they are, they're really very straightforward. And then we're going to put it all together and make the app. So I realize I've got about 23 minutes, so that's quite a lot of stuff there. So I'm going to plow ahead with this, okay? At this point, if anybody thinks, well, I've already done all that on Android, then, if you want to, come back at the end for the free bonus, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, let's plow straight ahead. So the first thing I'm going to do without further ado is just enlarge the font. So I'm just going to dip into settings, make the font a bit bigger. So you don't have to do this, but this will hopefully make the course from this point a bit easier. Make that 24. I hope that's a little bit nicer on your screens. And close it down. So looking in the code editor now, in fact, I'm going to close this down. I'm going to make a new app from scratch. So file, close project. I'm going to terminate the emulator and back to the welcome dialog with an ever-growing list of my recent apps. So let's make a new project again. Empty activity, that's absolutely fine. So this time, I'm going to make something that I find incredibly useful. I do running a bit of cycling. I'm always converting kilometers into miles. And I know something like 1.6, but you know, I have to go and I have to Google what that is. So I'm going to make a very simple app which has the box where I can type in the number, a button that says convert, and then a little label that says my mileage. It's not the most exciting app. I've only got 21 minutes, but this will give us a chance to cover a few of the basics. So I'll call this Vin KM converter. So this package name that maybe you can see underneath, com.example.vin, very quickly, if you want to publish this on the Play Store one day, the package name must be unique. So there's a convention that people follow. You don't have to, but it's recommended. You take whatever your domain name might be, com.skybettinggaming, and you do it in reverse, followed by the app name. So I think I have a domain called vinnorman.com. I've not done it in about 10 years. So if my domain was www.vinnorman.com, well, the convention would be com.vinnorman, so backwards, dot the name of your app, so Vin KM converter, all lowercase. You don't have to change that if you're a beginner, but if you think that your app might one day go on the Play Store, it's a good idea to do that because it's hard to change after the fact. So yeah, package name, make it unique. And if you don't have a domain, then com.yourname would probably be safe, hopefully, unless your name's John Smith. All right, so com.vinnorman.name of the app, save location, it's going to put them all in my nice new folder, that's great. Still on Java, and minimum SDK, minimum software developer kit. This just says how old a phone the app will work on. By default, it goes all the way back to 4.1 Jelly Bean, which is a really old version of Android, 99.8% in the world. Leaving that as the default is fine for a beginner, and I'm not going to change it now. Later on, I recommend changing it to a bit later, Lollipop, because you get some extra things you can do that you can't do for older users, but you don't need to change that. So the only thing you need to change is the name, package name if you want it on the Play Store, and then make it language Java in the beginning. Okay? And then finish. I'm going to maximize that. And then as you go into it, you'll get tips of the day. These are all really good. You might want to leave these on. I'm going to leave mine on. So every time you open it, you get some nice tips. And there's some things that will make sense, some things that won't, but there's lots of goodies there. No more activity down here. So I'm back in a new project again. So part one of this section, we're going to look at the layout files first, how to put things on the screen. Okay. So we have a .xml file here and a .java file. The Java file is our programming code where we make the app do things and respond. And this one is the actual screen. Okay. When you first go into it, you'll see this thing with all the bits you can drag in. You can drag and drop things like that. I don't recommend that because you can do it and have a look and see what code it generates, but no Android developer uses that. It might seem easy. It's more hassle than it is worth. I'm going to show you in a second how straightforward the actual XML code can be. So you get this design view with all some stuff. We don't care about that. If you go into split view, you get half code and half. I'm going to close the project pane down now. You get half code and half the design preview, and this is absolutely ideal. So let me go into full code view for now and demystify this. So XML, extensible or extendable markup language. Some of you might have heard of a markup language before, those of us who've heard of HTML, hypertext markup language. So markup language isn't a programming language, which you might think, oh, this looks really hard. You're telling me this isn't programming? Not really, because this doesn't really do anything. This is just a series of tags of markings, like an architect might mark a sheet of paper, put the door here, put the window here. It's just markings. And then Android understands these markings, goes, okay, so you want a button there. Oh, okay. So there's no kind of calculations or any kind of, saving things or whatever. It's just a static, it's a bit of text that Android knows what to do with. So let's demystify this. We'll start with this thing at the top, which you never have to care about. This is put in all of your layout files by default, just tells Android what version it is. There's only one version, version 1. If you were to delete this, nothing would happen because it kind of puts it in by default anyway. So we ignore that top line, whether it's there or not, doesn't matter, okay? So then that leaves us with this. So XML is made up of elements in yellow and their attributes, the things underneath, okay? So an element is a thing, text view, and the attributes is all the things you can do to that, all the things you can customize. And no one is expected to memorize all of these. Android really helps you out with these. So don't look at all these layout, width, height, text and be scared. If you can understand that we have an element in yellow and then the attributes, then so far so good. Now an attribute, like some sort of container, like a box to put things in, can have contents. So this constraint layout element here, well, the way you define an element in XML, I'll do a pretend one here. You have a little left arrow next to the M key, the name of the element, and then you do a right arrow. And then Android Studio will helpfully give you a closing tag. So this is a tag. So you have a tag that says, here's my element, and then a closing tag. And then if you have like an opening and closing tag, this could be, for example, my box to put things in element. Yeah. Then I can put other elements, my thing that goes in the box. Okay. So tags, a left arrow, the name of the thing, and then closing tag like that. Now, some things don't need to have anything else inside them. If you have a button or text, well, there's not going to be anything further inside the letters of those texts. The text is the thing. So some things like a text view, if I go to split view, so our hello world here, this text, this doesn't need anything inside it. I mean, I could do a right arrow and do those tags, but this sort of opening tag and closing tag is pointless. And if that's the case for things like buttons and text fields, then you can actually do what's called a self-closing tag. So this is my opening and closing tag element. And then inside it, my self-closing tag element. And this element just has a /. So if we look at the opening and closing tag element here, little arrow, name of the element, arrow, opening tag, and then little arrow, a /, which denotes the closing tag. So very similar, opening tag, closing tag, okay? But if it's something like a text view that doesn't need anything else inside it, you can just do a / and that's a self-closing tag. So if you understand that, how to do an opening tag and a closing tag or to self-close it, you get the concept of elements. All right, so let's just leave that one there. Which leads on to the second and final thing to do with XML. So that's our elements, and these things underneath are our attributes. So if we look at the text view, we have width, height, text, okay? So if that's my element and I do some new lines after the name of it, but before the end of that kind of arrow, I can do Android my pretend attribute equals speech marks, whatever value it is. This is all there is to layout code, elements and attributes. Okay, there's about 5,000 different attributes we could use. I don't know, maybe 4% of them off heart, but I know where to find them. I could do text view. How do I change the font? And it would tell me, start typing font family. And lo and behold, Android prompts you to auto-complete that. At this stage, don't worry about the Android : thing. Most of the attributes you can be using will be Android : something. And I can change the font to something bold. And I can Google, how do I change a text view size? Text size, 24 SP, and it will tell you to do it in a SP or DP for pixels. I'm not going to go too detailed with some of these finer points about what SP and DP is. And in real time, you get the update there. So that's as much detail as I'm going to go into in this quick flyover. But all you need to remember is in the XML, you have elements in tags, either opening and closing tags or self-closing if there's nothing inside them. And then those elements have attributes. So I'm now going to quickly, in about 1 minute, build the 3 things that we need on our screen for this app. And then you'll be able to review this video, which is being recorded, or further your learning later. So let me delete everything apart from the first line. So That constraint layout is a very slightly more complicated container for putting things in, where you can pin things to different sides of the screen. So I'm going to go with a really basic container called a linear layout. And this is where you just stack things either on top of each other or side by side. So let's build a layout right now. So left arrow, oops, delete. Okay, so left arrow, and with a capital L, linear layout with a capital L like that. And autocomplete's quite clever. You can type part of the first word and part of the second word, and it knows what you mean. And I'm going to autocomplete that, he says. Not today, it's not. Okay, and we have linear layout opening tag and linear layout backwards tag. It's complaining because we need to give it width and height. It tells you what attributes you need. So I can do that. I can start typing width, and I want it to be as big as the screen. So match parent, and height, and match parent. So that's a box that's going to fill the screen. Now linear layouts can stack things on top of each other or side by side. And there's an attribute called orientation. So I want 3 things stacked on top of each other, so I'll go with vertical. And now inside this element, I can start putting things, okay? So we need something to put for the user to type in, so that'll be an edit text. You would Google this, you'd learn this, but there's maybe about 5 or 6 elements like edit text, button, text view, drop down, spinner. There's about 4 or 5 you need as a beginner, and you'll quite soon get those memorized. We don't want this to be as big as the screen, so I'll go with wrap content. Please only be as big as it needs to be. Okay. Self-closing tag, because I don't need anything else inside this field. I want to prompt the user with a hint, so I would Google and find out that hint is the attribute for that. Please enter KM, or probably like that. Okay. And on the screen, we can sort of see, there it is. It's in the top left, so we need to center it. We'll do that in a moment. Then we'll have a button. Wrap content, and we'll make the text of the button be calculate. And then we need the actual the text, you know, like the hello world text. Wrap content. I'm just going to type a dummy answer for now. Let's just type this is where the result will be. Okay. If we look here on the right, we can see we've got our 3 things. I think this will look a bit nicer if they're centered in the screen. So there's an attribute you can apply to a container, like linear layout. So this linear layout with its things inside it, we can move everything. We can move the alignment of everything inside that with an attribute called gravity, not to be confused with layout gravity for the things inside it. And we'll just do center. And they jump to the middle, looking good. Might be nice to have some margin, so I can put some margin on the button, margin top. Right now, as a beginner, you're thinking, oh my God, there's so many attributes. You are not supposed to memorize these. All right. Understand the concept of an element and attributes and elements inside of the elements. The rest of this, Google is your friend. Reviewing this video is your friend. Let's do 24 dp, 24 pixels, density independent pixels, so it'll be the same space no matter how high res the phone. I'll do the same for my text view. That's looking okay. I'm just going to throw some more random attributes at you to get used to it. Let's do a funky font family. Let's do sans serif light. That might look kind of modern. Let's make the text a bit bigger. Similar-ish to CSS. I mean, CSS is looks probably a bit more like little bit more like kind of bit more like, I don't know, like JavaScript, I think. But you get the idea, you know. It's like it's the concept of attributes and elements. So I'm just responding to a question in the chat. Those of you who are wondering what I'm talking about. Okay, let's make it a bit bigger. That's looking a bit modern. Let's make it be a bit of a darker color. Let's make it the app's primary color. Oh, that's nice. A purple, very good. So elements, attributes, looking good. I'm going to give these 3 things one more thing they're going to need. Android's going to read this file like a blueprint here, and show it on the screen. But we then need to, in the programming code, actually access these things. So to access the edit text, the button, the text view, we need to give them an ID. Otherwise, it'll be on the screen, but we won't be able to say, hey, I want that thing. So we give all of them an ID. So edit text, ID, autocomplete, that plus ID thing, that's crucial. Edit text, lowercase, user input. Okay, all one word with underscores. button, we'll call it button calculate, and text view, we'll do text view results. And we're done. That's it. We've got a layout. We don't need to come into this again. Okay, so that's a crash course in XML. There's 6 minutes left and I've not started programming. Josh, can I go over by 10 minutes? Is that going to be okay?
Absolutely fine with me. Obviously, we're recording it as well. If anyone's unable to stay on for that, I will record the session as well. But yeah, just stay on if you can, and yeah, we'll carry on.
Biting off more than I can chew, as usual. Okay, good. So we have our layout, and you know what? Let's run this now and see how it looks on the screen. So I'm going to click run. I'll do one more thing to the edit text. So the user input, we'll type in the word input type, and we'll make this number. And that one little attribute is really nice. When the user presses that field on their keyboard, it will only show numbers, because we might run into problems if we try and calculate 1.66 times cheese or some random thing that the user might type in. We do number, it eliminates that one potential user bug. Okay, let's interact with this now and play with this. So let's click play. My emulator's over here. I'm going to drag it over. So bottom, we have some activity. By the way, guys, in all these awkward pauses where things are running, do keep firing questions over to me. I've got my chat thing there. I've got to think it too, so cutting around. Great so far. Cheers, Juan A. A.Juan. Yep. Thanks very much. So as you can see on the screen, we have the user input. They click it. They have numbers only. Fantastic. And a calculate button that does nothing, and our silly placeholder text. But that's the layout done. That's all there is to it in Android. Containers, buttons, put them in different places, and then boom. All right. Let's cover coding in 15 minutes. Okay. Here's the programming code. The very top, a bit like our thing here, we have a line that we don't need to worry about. This just tells Java, the thing that puts all these files together, where to find your file. So that will be always there for you by default. Don't worry about that. Imports, you can see they collapsed here, collapsed together. We're going to write a file called main activity. Yeah, that's our file. But we might borrow other code. We might borrow bundle or, you know, app compat activity. So when you use other people's files, you just say, hey, Android system, I need to use these files. And if I start typing a new file like Android's alert called the toast, which is a little pop-up thing, if I autocomplete that, it takes care of the imports for you automatically. So these two sections, good to know what they are. If you use autocomplete, you won't need to touch those. So we can forget about those, okay? I'll delete this thing now. So this is what we care about. There's a few buzzwords that I'm not going to be able to go into big detail with at the moment, like public, class, extends. But all you need to worry about right now is this notion of class, main activity class, matching main activity Java. Inside these brackets is where we write our code. Simple as that. Okay, then we have some more confusing stuff. We have a little block here. We'll get into what this block actually is in about 5 minutes. Some more buzzwords that I'm not going to be able to do today, but don't worry about them. All you need to know is that when Android first opens the app, it will know to run main activity, it will know to open this file. It will run this on create block, okay? And even without knowing anything about programming, set content view, brackets, r.layout.activity_main. Well, where have you seen this before? Here, okay? So this on its own does nothing, this layout file, that's just a blueprint. But the programming code here, this is what actually tells Android, hey Android, can you please look at that file, read it like a site manager for a building site, and read it like a blueprint, and then build the screen for me, please. And this bit of code here does it all for us. We don't need to care about what happens, okay? So there's 3 things we're going to need to do. We're going to need to, and then once this onCreate method has finished, then we're kind of sitting there waiting for things to happen on the screen. So we need to, once the screen has loaded, once this has happened, actually look at the screen and say, hey, Mr. User text field, button and label, I want to kind of remember you and do things and interact with you. So we need to kind of save some kind of reference, some kind of access to those things in code. We need to be able to touch those things. So that's our concept on variables, which we'll do in about 30 seconds. Then we need to call some blocks of code like the set content view thing. This is somebody else's code that they've written, a thing called a method, a little block of code like this on create that they've written. So we're going to learn after variables about methods and how they're not that scary, really. And then we need to do some logic, because what happens if the user doesn't type anything and we times nothing, 0 by something or whatever. So we want to maybe cover what happens if this happens, and that's conditional logic. So see if I can do all those 3 things in 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to jump over now to, no, I'll do it in here to save time. So when we think of a programming language, we think of all this crazy matrix code stuff, but actually it's not that at all. These words you see here, set content view, on create, these are human readable. We maybe know that computers don't deal in words, they deal in ones and zeros and off switches and thousands of these things. And it would, cheers Adam, thanks. It would in theory be possible to write in ones and zeros, but it would take forever, it'd be nearly impossible. So we programmers write in words that eventually actually make perfect sense to us. If user is logged in, do this, you know. And then Android Studio takes care of converting that to all the hard stuff, yeah? So a programming language like Java, like Swift, like anything, just gives instructions to a computer. What's one of the most fundamental things that a computer can do? It can remember things for us. Hey computer, your memory, your RAM, your 8 GB of memory, can you remember this word, please, for as long as I want, for as long as I tell you to, and then later on, when I ask you for name number 1, give me that name back, please. Memory, yeah? So concept number 1, I'm going to do a comment by doing // This is a comment. I can make notes, yay. All right, so the first concept is variables. A variable is us saying to a computer, hey computer, go to your 8 GB of memory, that big pot of memory, reserve a tiny bit of memory for me, please. I'm going to give it a name called my number, cheese, Dave, whatever you want, use it input. And you give it a name, and then I'm going to put something into that. I'm going to put a value into that. And keep remember that for me. And then later on, I might say, hey, give me name 1 back. Okay. And the way you do that, really complicated thing of reserving a bit of space in a computer's RAM is like this. You say the type of thing you want to remember. So a number is called an integer. So in Java, we would say int, lowercase, that's a number. Hey, computer, I've got a number for you. So that's the type. I'm going to call it my amazing number. And equals. So this little bit of space you've now reserved here, they've gone ahead and reserved that space for us already. Done. All lines in Java end in semicolons inside the blocks. Okay, so that's one line tells the computer to remember space for us. Equals says, put that number into it, please. And then later on, I can say, show on screen my number if I'd written some code, you know, and I could give that number. Yeah. So that's the variable. Hey computer, this type of thing, a word, a number, a true or false value, a dog, a button, a character, reserve some space, put that in. Oh, later on I might change it. I might change it again. Don't need to put int again. I've already declared it here. Now I'm just accessing it. I'm going to put a new number in it. And a new number later on. Okay. And that's variables. We can do a few variables. Let's do string. Oh, so for words, you'd think text, wouldn't you? Text, that would be a good name for it. Not in programming. They think of text as a string of characters, lots of characters on a piece of string. So they have the word string with a capital S as opposed to the lowercase I for int. So lots of little nuances and subtle things here that are a bit different, hard to memorize in one webinar. But the idea is my type of thing is a string of characters. This is my text. That's my name. That's now reserved me some space. Amazing. And strings go inside speech marks. This is my string of characters. Okay, and that's variables. Type of thing, give it a name so we can access it, and then put something into it. Okay. There's about 2 or 3 bits of code in this course, which I'm going to just have to say, sorry, trust me, not got time to go into every little bit of this. One of those is the way we show an alert on the screen. So I can do a thing called toast, which is a file like main activity, and make text is a block of code like on create. Context, sorry, just can't explain that. This screen is the context. And the text, I could say, hi, this is my alert. Yeah, I could do that. So I can run this app now, and we're going to see a little pop-up saying, hi, this is my alert. Let's prove that. Okay. And I just typed that value in, didn't I? I typed it there. But I can also use my lovely reserved bit of memory. I can replace this with the name of my variable. Let's do this as my text. Set from a variable. And now I can use this again later. So now when I run the app, this is my string of characters set from a variable. So we programmers, we like to save things in memory. That's what we do. That's variables in a nutshell. So how can we use this? Well, the next thing we need to do is we need to find those views on the screen, the text field, the button, and the label, and save them with a name, like the button, the whatever. And then later on, hey, user input dot get me the text, please. Hey, button dot when it's clicked, do this. So I'm gonna delete this. Actually, I'll comment this out so it's still there for later. Okay. So let's make a variable of type edit text for our field. Let's call it the user input field. And let's make that equal to. So we now need to run a bit of code, somebody else's code, like this set content view thing. We need to run a bit of code that will find that on the screen. So a thing to remember, find view by ID, somebody else's code. This is a method, method meaning a block of code. We'll cover this in a second. Remember that we gave those views IDs, ID. So just like r.layout.activityMain, we have r.id.the ID. So edit text is edit text user input. It auto-completes for you. Android's really good at that. Semicolon. We have a button, so the type of variable is button. Make me some space for a button, please. I'll call it the calculate button. It's good to not make variables start with an uppercase. Don't worry about the conventions. You're not going to memorize that all. Find view by ID, r.id button calculate, making heavy use of autocomplete here. And then it's the text view, so we can update that. So result text view. View results. So what we've done there is we've made a variable for each of the things, named it so we can access it later, and we've called somebody else's code. I don't care how this works, it just works, all right? This is a method. This onCreate is a method. When you have a file like mainActivity.java, or a class like this, these blocks here are methods. I can make one now, and I'm going to. Forget the word protected. Forget the word void, but I must type void. We're saying, does this method give anything back? Void is no, there's nothing. Void, nothing. So this doesn't give anything back. But when I request to call this, I'll call this method setup app. All right, it's a good idea to not put all your code in this create thing anyway. So we'll put it all in our own little block. Left bracket, right bracket, we can pass values like numbers into this, but that's way too complicated for this intro thing. So just a simple name of a method, empty bracket, so it won't need anything. And then the curly braces, shift next to the square bracket near the P button. And then Android will autocomplete that. So I can now move all of this, cut this, and put it in here. And then rather than doing it there, I can call this method setup app. So in Java and in lots of programming languages like Swift and whatever, they might be called functions, they might be called methods, just blocks of code. So we can make a variable and access that variable by name, or we can organize our code by nice little useful blocks, show login screen, show welcome screen into a little block, and then we can just call setup app. So when I'm doing find view by ID, I'm actually just accessing somebody else's block of code. Okay? That's methods. In a more advanced course, you'd learn how you can pass things in, like IDs. You can give that method a name. Say hello method. Give it the name of James, and it will say, hi there, James. All right, but that's methods, a block of code, nothing more. So that's our third thing. So we've got variables and methods going on here. one of the difficult parts of this thing is how to make a button respond to a click listener. This is the one of only 2 bits of code, like that toast thing, where you're just gonna have to trust me on this. There's too much to explain in one tutorial. So I'll take my button variable. So I've got that saved, so I'm gonna request it now by name. Now buttons can listen out for whether or not they're touched. So the program's running, it's there, it's waiting, and we can say, hey button, can you listen for certain things? So I'm gonna set an on-click listener. Okay, so listen out for clicks, please. And I've got to give it something complex. I've got to give it a new on-click listener. I'm going to use autocomplete there. And look at all that junk it does. If I had another half an hour, I could completely demystify that, but I'm already nearing the end of my time. So this is just a thing, another file like our main activity actually, which sits inside of here, yeah? And that file has a method like our setup app method. All you need to know as a beginner, when you do this, and you can find this on Google in like a minute, this block of code, and you can let Android autocomplete it for you. All you need to know is that when this button is touched, everything in here will run. So let's prove that. Let's do our lovely little alert thing, the toast thing. Let's say, wow, the button was clicked. I've got to update the context. Don't worry about this for now. Okay, so we can now make the button respond to things. Let's make sure that works. Okay, presses the button. Wow, the button was clicked. Okay, so we found our button, we saved it to a variable, and then we use that variable. Hey, now we've got you saved. Now I've got you, I can use you. Add a listener. Okay. So that's pretty good. So let's just get over the line now and just do the very simple app. Let's now say we need the user input. We need to times it by, what does it become? Is it 1.6? I'm going to do 1.6. I know it's more accurate than that. If somebody wants to drop me the exact calculation in chat, that would really help me. But for now, I'll just times by 1.6. So I'm going to take the user input field and do a little thing called get text. So I'm going to get the number from that field. Okay. It's not going to give me that text as a string that I want, a string of characters. So I'm going to do a thing called toString. So that's my variable. That's a method called getText, some code that somebody else wrote that gives me the text. And toString is another method on top of that that gives me that. Thank you, Josh. That's another method that 1.60934. That's another method that then makes it into a string variable. So I'm actually now going to save this as a variable, string, the user input, string. Hey, Android, make me a variable and set it to the fields text string. Now I can't do maths with text, so I need to convert this to a number. So very sorry for something else that's a bit complicated. Let's do an int variable for a number. Oh, sorry, no. Integers, whole numbers. We need a decimal. And confusingly in Java, a decimal is called a double, standing for double precision, blah, blah, blah. D for decimal, D for double. A double for our decimal result. Oh, no, we don't. No, we don't. The user is going to be typed. I wonder if they might type in a decimal. Let's be safe and leave it as decimal. So decimal result. I forget if the number thing gives them a full stop or not. Decimal result, and we'll make that equal to the user input string, so text. But we actually need to do a fancy thing where we convert that. So here's a thing you would Google to find out. Let's do string.value of, oops, hang on, double dot parse double. Okay. A bit of just trust me code that will convert our text into a number that we need for maths, okay? So we now have our number as maths, variables, methods. Let's do the maths now. Let's do double the conversion. And let's make it equal to decimal result times. You can do basic, you can do times, you can do plus, you can do divide and subtract with number decimal variables. So let's do decimal result times 1.60934. And then let's just show that on the label. Results text view dot set text. These are all methods that you would not know straight away, but you would Google or you would begin to learn. And we can't put just a number into it. So like we converted the text to a double, well, we've got to convert the double back again. So let's make a new string variable called the string result, and that's string.value of the conversion. So a few methods here that I'm just showing you here, but you get the concept. Lots of variables. Now I can display this. I should probably change our placeholder from this is the result to be to please enter a value. And let's run the app because I think the app is finished. Okay, Vin KM converter. So please enter a value. Let's type this. Yep, they have got a full stop, so good that we did the decimal thing nice and early. I want to know what my 5K run was in miles. Calculate 8.0467. Okay, this would look nicer if I actually add. So unlike with maths, when you add to a string, you can actually add more letters with a plus and then some more speech marks. Space miles. Let's run this again. Ignore the warning. 10 miles is, oops, 10 kilometers is 60.0934 miles. Okay, so with not much code, I can delete this now, I guess. We've changed our layout file. Huh. Yes. 1.603 miles to km. So if I do divided by, will that be right? Somebody can tell me. I think that'd be right. I'm clearly living proof that you don't need a maths degree either to be a software engineer. So 5 kilometers is actually, of course, 3.10 blah, 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 miles. Okay. Thanks, JHE03. Yeah, that's very good. So you can see here with making our own method, we don't have to do that. We could have put all this inside here. That would have been absolutely fine as well. Yeah. But somehow I find my version a bit tidier. So we have made some variables. We've found the things on the screen, and then we've added a click listener, and then we've picked out of those things on the screen the value, done some maths to it, and we've displayed it. And the very final thing I said I would talk about is conditional logic. What if the user does something empty? So do you remember when I did earlier on? I did if user.is logged in. Yeah, that's conditional logic. If this happens, so if brackets the user input field dot get text dot to dot length equals 0. If there's nothing in the user input field, then we should say, please enter a value. Else, we can go ahead. So we will do our useful little alert thing. Let's say, please, you must enter a value. Okay. So conditional logic, the idea that not all of your users are going to use your app the same way. What if they're logged in? What if they're not? What if the password's too short? This is where us programmers can start to think like problem solvers. I think if they don't enter any value, it would be good to show them, hey, you should enter something. I don't know, try doing maths on nothing. That might go. Dividing by 0 divided by, I think that could be a problem and could make things go bang. All right, so conditional logic is no more than having a condition. And if that condition is true, if brackets something that can be true or false, run that block, otherwise run that block. So let's now see our app in full. Click, you must enter a value. Oh, thanks for the alert. 10 kilometers, calculate 6.21 miles. And I think that is variables, methods, conditional logic, and putting it all together complete. Okay, so going back to the presentation now, yeah, we've done all of those things there. Where do I go from here? this would be a really good point to take any questions. I know we've gone over by 18 minutes here. If you have got any, either come off the microphone and unmute the microphone and speak it, or put it in chat. I would say, go and download Android Studio now. Go and get it. 10 minutes of your time. Get it on your machine. Yeah? Run that app on the emulator. If you've got an Android phone, Google, how do I do USB debugging on my phone, and plug it in and get it on your phone. Change that text view. Put something funny, put a joke, and show your friends, hey, look what I made with 10 minutes of my time. Yeah? Then find some, thank you, Ariel. Then find some sort of course or book or blog or code long. Be mindful of the ones that say, just type this, don't worry about it. I've been very wary to not do that too much today, because it's very frustrating. Like, why am I typing this? But if you can get these concepts under your belt and just dive in, make your own converter. Convert meters to feet and inches. Yeah, might be a little bit harder, like adding inches and feet together. But all those things that are slightly harder, which push you out of your comfort zone, you will Google the answer. You'll hack away at it, and eventually you'll get it to work. And when you make it work yourself, that's when it really, really sticks. Okay. I did promise a bonus at the end for those of you who stayed. 20 minutes past my allotted time. So if I just move on, I have a Udemy course that I started making before lockdown, early March. 8.5 hours of content, a little bit more structured and less improvised, because I've had a chance to edit it down a bit. But you know, it's not complete yet. It's about 20 hours total to give you a complete background of Android. But this is a Android Developer Bootcamp. It's on Udemy as a private course, so it's not searchable, but it's accessible with the link. I'm probably going to charge £20–25 for it, but I'm going to give it to everybody here for free. Yay. All right. It's a work in progress, so the condition is, please give me feedback. Tell me things that don't make sense. Tell me things that I over-explain or under-explain, or things that don't quite make sense. But you can have this course for free, everybody on this course. You can share the course, maybe. Basically, the coupon is 3 days unlimited redemption. I shouldn't be telling you this. If you sign up in the next 3 days, you'll have the course for free for life. 8.5 hours content. I go into what activities are. I go into you know, layouts, making lists, moving to new screens. It's going to be complete when I find time between my job to finish it. So you can have it for free. The link is there. I'm sure Josh will find a way of sharing that, so you don't have to screenshot it and stuff. So yeah, that's the link. I think that link will take you straight to the course with the coupon there. In case you need the coupon, it's we like free stuff. So udemy.com/the-complete-android-developer-bootcamp. That's the course.
Yeah, I've got one for you then.
Go on, Josh.
So obviously you switched from teaching, moved into coding. Obviously initially you started, I imagine, doing online courses, like you say. At what point did you think, I'm qualified enough or I know enough to apply for a role in tech?
That's a really good question.
Sorry, I muted you.
It's a really good question. There's two things I'll say. Number one, the point at which I felt brave enough to try my own projects, I did too late. I should have done it earlier. I was too chicken. Yeah. Diving in to actually the code is where I really learned. So to all people who want to do this, make your own projects before you think you're ready. With the job thing, same. I wish I'd applied earlier. I actually got a version of this teacher gradebook attendance app made in the space of about 6 months to a year. Really ugly, really messy. I'm not proud of it now. It's on the Play Store with about 20,000 downloads. It's really buggy. I've not had time to go back to it. One day I will. That became my business card. If you could go ahead and just make your project, make your app, make a better to-do app, make a better note app or whatever, that becomes your business card. If you do end up teaching yourself and you don't have a computer background, there are employers out there that actually respect somebody who can self-learn, somebody who can provenly self-learn over a big list of yesterday's technology. Some people just go, oh, I know this from 20 years, but actually I'm apathetic and I'm not really bothered, and this is all out of date. It's moving so fast, technology. If you can teach yourself, and I believe all of you can, with the right approach, with the right consistency, which hopefully my course will help to guide you in. If you can start to teach yourself, then that will prove that you can self-learn. And if you can self-learn, then you are very, very attractive to a lot of employers who value that self-learning ability over a list of things you did 10 years ago. So make an app, publish it, and then if you want to, if you're not going to then make a fortune from your app business, just at that point say, hey, I think I'm ready for a junior job because I can make apps, and here's my proof. Yeah. So that project you might do would be your business card. The password is Let's Learn Android, all lowercase. So Let's Learn Android. I wonder where I can put that somewhere. Annotate text. Let's learn. Do you see that, everyone?
Yeah, I see that fine.
Okay. So yeah, when you go to the link, you'll need to make a Udemy account. That's free. You'll need the password to get onto the course page, and then the coupon should be auto activated. But yeah, I'd encourage anyone to give it a go. It's so fun. I mean, I love teaching, and I got a lot of skills from teaching that have helped me in this career as well. Hopefully, the way I did this was okay. I love being a software developer. I love the autonomy of having a problem and being able to solve it your own way. So I'd encourage anyone, dive in now, download the software now, get it on your phone today, change the text and show it to your friends tonight, remotely, socially distancedly. And then, make your thing, make it. It'll be really long, and you would take 20 lines of code to do what you'll later learn only needs 10, to which you'll later learn only needs 2, and that's the journey. But making something that works, whatever level, is something to be really proud of. And I encourage you all to do that. I'm try and find my chat thing again. I've lost all my windows. Where is it? Let me try and find my windows. Any more questions? Or chat, 2 questions here. Would you say it's more beneficial to learn the Java basics and apply them the more you go, so doing a deep dive? Vanessa, that's a really good question. When I first got started, I followed a not very good Android course that was like, hey, Android, just type this. Don't worry about what methods are, just type this. Really frustrated. I bought an excellent book called, I'll type it, Head First Java. Now, there's a caveat to this. Kotlin is the new language, and it is beautiful. I would encourage you to read some guides on the pros and cons first, going straight into Kotlin, the new modern, clean, simple-looking language that kind of hides some of what's going on under the hood. The pros of that versus the pros of understanding what fundamentally that Kotlin gets converted to. I'm in the start with Java, do it for a month or 2 to learn concepts about variables, types, and whatnot, which Kotlin kind of hides a little bit. The switch to Kotlin from Java is fine. But to answer your question, yeah, learning the Java basics is a good idea. Do both. Try my course, try another course, try some YouTube things on Android, and look at some Java ones. Head First Java is one of the best books, tutorial books I've ever read. Wish I'd written it. It's just so entertainingly written. And if you are completely new to programming, you will find that book so fun. It's got puzzles, games, anecdotes, and you will leave knowing like variables and types and methods really well. But it's a spiral. Don't just go, a year on Android, a year on Java. Just dip into bits here and there. Go with Android. When classes and voids doesn't make sense, have a look at some Java and then come back to it. As a teacher, spiral learning, where you keep revisiting concepts, and then as you get stronger, get better. That's the way to go, in my opinion. But just jump in the deep end. Like if Google can be your friend as well. DS, is it possible to communicate from one app to the other, producer and consumer app? Well, yes. I mean, I don't know what you mean by producer and consumer. I mean, if you mean like a web and app, I mean, of course, like a Twitter, that app will call a web server, but apps can interrelate. You can put a latitude and longitude to your business, have a button that says navigate to my restaurant, because I've made a restaurant app with my local village restaurant app with drinks and menus. navigate, that will open Google Maps. Didn't have time to get into this activity thing. You saw activity, you know, and the idea that that's the screen where you can call other activities. You can say, hey, is there any app here that can handle a location? And then it will call out, hey, phone. Every time you press a web link, it says, what do you want to open this app with? And it gives you a whole choice. So yes, DS, you can communicate with other apps. You can communicate with web servers. You can do anything. You can make Grand Theft Auto on it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, you know, I've scratched the surface of what you can do. But if I understand you correctly, you know, yes to both. So some of that actually is in my course. Chapter 3, yeah, activities. Okay, so any more questions? These are really good questions, by the way. Any more for any more? Okay, Josh. In the absence of anybody else jumping in, I think we'll draw a line under that there. Only the 50% extra time over today.
Yeah, no, you know, it's great. It was all relevant anyway. You'd rather go on a little bit further than try and stick it into an hour with no one following. So yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed that. Thanks again, Vin, for putting it together. It was a really good one. I'm obviously a beginner on coding as well, so I'm definitely going to have a look into it and download the Udemy app. Yeah, thanks again. Big thanks to you.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thanks for stopping by, guys. And you know, if there's demand for it, maybe I'll do a intermediate Android course.
Yeah, by all means, I'm sure it will. Everyone will be back. So yeah, remember to try and leave some feedback if you use the app, so Vin can improve it further. But yeah, thanks a lot for everyone attending, and thanks again, Vin.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.